Hello, ED 563. I am re-recording formative assessment and reading classrooms for Module 6 and hoping that it gets posted. My apologies. Let's begin. Peter Johnston, who wrote Choice Words and many other wonderful books. Please look him up. He's a Stenhouse author and someone that I've listened to and admire greatly. Says assessment is informative if it doesn't influence learning in a positive way. According to Regi Routman in Reading Essentials, as much as possible, we teachers need to do our own ongoing assessments with our students using materials that students are already reading or likely to read. Our own assessments are the ones that really drive instruction. So, goals for formative assessment. Formative assessment, as opposed to summative assessment, is ongoing, it's daily, is something we do every day. We really get to know our students. We have a picture of what they're doing and where they're headed. It's about using our knowledge gleaned from uh, everyday observations. You may keep anecdotal records, your kid watching, your notes from your reading conferences, your writing conferences, any rubrics or checklists that you're using, your observation notes from classroom discussions, and writing samples that inform instruction. All of that is formative assessment. The idea is to provide immediate and ongoing feedback to your learners so that they can try new things and set short and long-term goals for themselves, a lot of times with your help, and helping them really evaluate their own progress. So, lots of opportunities to reflect on their learning. That starts very early. Sometimes they can use a checklist for self-reflection. Sometimes they're just talking to you about how they are working toward a goal. But you're building on their strengths and you're always celebrating their efforts while becoming competent, confident learners. So reading workshop is really perfect for this work, as is a writing workshop, because it is structured practice designed for student growth and success. So here are some questions to ask yourself. What do you really want your students to know and understand? What are they actually learning and able to recall and use appropriately as strategic readers? What can you do to help your students learn what you believe they need to know in order to move forward as readers, writers, and thinkers? These are the kinds of things that we need to ask ourselves as we think about the formative assessment practices that we're using in our classroom. Now, with kid watching, Yetta Goodman and Ken Goodman are known for their work with whole language, but really, kid watching is for every classroom, whether you're doing structured literacy or something else. Kid watching is what we do throughout our day, really across the content areas as well. But what we do is we watch and we take little notes, a series of observations that we can record, keep track of. Sometimes I like to clipboard cruise with a manila folder that is opened and has boxes in it with the kids' names in each box. And I'll put a post-it note in maybe 4 or 5 of those boxes during independent reading and independent writing. Sometimes when I'm observing, I'm an outside observer listening into a book club or whole class discussion or small group discussion. And I will just try to take notes on a post-it size um, piece of paper, a sticky note, for about 4 or 5 of my students. Sometimes as I'm targeting 4 or 5 each day so I can get through all of them within a week. Sometimes I'll really notice that one student, even though he or she is not on my list to observe that day, is doing something pretty wonderful, pretty awesome, or maybe I'm noticing a particular struggle. Maybe I'm noticing that this student seems to be engaged in fake reading. And I have to make a note of that because I want to double check that that student is making good choices when he book shops. Most of the kids who are fake reading because they do not know how to choose a book wisely for themselves. And so you have to figure out what's wrong, what the problem is, so that you can nip that fake reading during independent reading time in the bud and get them to actually um, engage and eventually get into that what Nancy Atwell calls that reading zone. That's what we want for all of our students. But you need to take notes of sorts ongoing with literacy development because that's the only way you can really share with parents or with administrators to provide that concrete evidence of the kinds of student learning that traditional testing absolutely cannot capture. Here are some great questions for kid watching. Um, Use them as you need them. So things like, what am I observing that helps me describe the level of engagement with an independent read? Or how does the student read the room when he or she is responding to a text? Or what do students do when they struggle, when they have a problem, when comprehension breaks down? How do they gain comprehension? What do they do? How do they problem solve? And is there evidence of self-advocacy in my reading community? What kinds of things have I noticed? What strengths am I observing? And where does a student have an area of expertise? Other things that you can ask and look for are things like, how are my students building their readers and writers identity? So very important to raise them to that very conscious level of I am a reader and I am a writer. What kinds of decisions do my readers make during independent reading time, during peer conferences, during student teacher conferences, during small group instruction? Where do I see the tracks of my teaching? The evidence that students are using the skills, strategies, and procedures examined and demonstrated in my mini lessons. Am I seeing it in their responses in their reader's notebook? Am I seeing it in their responses during book club or during a whole group class discussion? Am I seeing it as evidenced in their responses with partners during mini lesson when they think ink pair share or think pair share. So moving on to looking at reading conferences, I think most of you have probably held your first reading conference with your students, but it's still not too late to ask them this time of year to bring in 3 books with them, a favorite book, a book with a character they admire or identify with, a book that they would change in some way, a book that they have read more than once, and ask them really to read their favorite book in its entirety, mentally assessing for fluency components, and doing some quick note taking. So you're going to have them read from their favorite book and read several passages, maybe in several different places in the book. If it's a big book, ask them to choose some pages and read to you. This could be a cold read or a warm read. You can do both. If the student struggles a bit during the read, you can always take turns alternating pages or passages. Um, the 3 book conference helps you know a little bit about your student, what he likes and dislikes. It will provide some insights into decoding, fluency, and comprehension skills. You certainly can ask some questions about the passages that your student has chosen to read to you. So it can get you started with initial notes about the readers in your classroom. We really need to know what our students are reading, who are their favorite authors, what genres are they reading, if they're reading at home, and we need to also um, watch them bookshop and talk to them about how they choose books because that is so very important. These are the kinds of things you can do during a reading conference. You can note how the reader approaches the text. Can he or she retell with ease? And consider how that reader is retelling. Is it a focus on literal details when retelling, or does the reader add own his or her own thoughts and interpretations? Is the reader making meaning from the text, citing evidence to support their thinking? And is the reader using strategies that you've taught previously? Think about the body language, the tone of voice. What is that all telling you? So, a reading conference is your chance to be with a child, to listen to the thinking this reader is doing to make meaning from the text, how this reader is doing it, and then you can assess and make some decisions on future work for this reader. Note taking in during a conference is just maybe a few notes and then the act of reflecting on those notes and taking action. So, conference notes really are very helpful when they're regularly reviewed so that you can see the growth your readers are making, see evidence of your instruction, the tracks of your teaching, assess the reader's ability to use strategies and make decisions about the future work for this student and the reading community. One thing I love to use when I am talking about formative assessment, especially across the day, is the use of exit and admit or entry slips. They really are a great way to gain insight into how much your kids are taking out of a lesson, a strategy, how they can reflect on some of the big ideas, the big concepts that have been introduced. It really only takes a few minutes, especially when kids are used to doing this. Sometimes you can take these admit or exit slips um, and use them twice. So, for example, if you have an exit slip and you collect them and get a chance to just quickly review, you don't have to grade. You may write down some of your thoughts or some things that really stand out to you. But I let kids take their exit slips and use them as admit slips so they can get together in a small group and I clipboard cruise and circulate and listen in as the kids are sharing their exit slips and figuring out what they have in common with each other. Sometimes all the kids in a group have the same question or are confused about the same thing, and this will give them courage very often to speak up in class and voice their confusion or anxieties and share with you. Especially the older they get, the less they really want to talk to you when they're confused. They don't want to admit it. But there's power in a group all saying, "Yeah, I didn't get this." The other thing is you can listen into the kinds of things that they are reflecting on, evaluating, the aha moments that they've had, the questions that they still have, their goals or the big idea that they took away. What was the most important thing that they're carrying away with them? When will they use this kind of strategy again? All of these things are great for admit or exit slips, and really you can ask them to respond simply to one or two questions. Sometimes I give them choice. So we do this at the end of workshop, and it is an opportunity to reflect. Sometimes we might ask them just simply to rate their level of engagement during independent reading time. And sometimes we can even ask them to keep track of their level of engagement and teach them how to plot in a line plot graph. That can you can do that for the entire class, to make a line graph to display and plot the level of engagement for the entire class. Exit slips are wonderful, gives us the opportunity to notice trends in thinking and understanding, and gives us lots of information for future planning. Interest surveys and inventories are good in the beginning of the year, in the middle of the year, later on, third quarter. We really want to use surveys throughout the year to help us note the growth of our readers and allow new goals to be created. We can use them at the beginning of a unit of study. We may want to, for example, learn more about our readers as readers of nonfiction or memoir or biography, etc., before embarking on a unit that focuses on reading informational text. Self-assessment is always wonderful. Pausing to give time for self-reflection and assessment can really help our readers in our classrooms and how they see themselves as readers, writers, and thinkers. But it adds a different layer to their understanding and this whole idea of raising them to that conscious level of I am a reader and I am a writer. So self-assessment, they have to own the process, and ownership is a big thing. We have to involve them in assessments, and so they own it, so that it's more meaningful for them, so that they care. So sometimes we even allow them to give themselves a grade and talk about why they deserve the A for this essay that they wrote, or this reader response to a particular story. There's so many checklists that you can use to self-assess, but have children help you create a checklist to, again, add, it gives the students more ownership and increases the likelihood of use. For this, you can start as early as first and second grade, talking to them about creating a checklist so they can keep it simple so that they can use it, but just so that they can assess a skill, a strategy, a procedure, their interest level, and working independently during reading workshop and reading on their own. All of this can be done with students' involvement. So you want to, again, give them some ownership here. Reading workshop survival skills are things like completes classwork assigned in required time, looks at the teacher when instructed, follows the teacher's verbal and written instructions, requests assistance, that's self-advocacy, explanations, requests instruction from the teacher when needed. So being your own self-advocate and raising your hand and letting the teacher know when you require an additional explanation or instruction or assistance. Using time productively while waiting for teacher assistance. No long queues at your desk for people waiting for a reading or writing conference. They should be working independently. You have to devise a better system for kids to know when it's their time for a conference. I like to use status of the class in reading and writing workshop. I talk about this in Welcome to Reading Workshop, what status of the class looks like, so that I know which of my students are going to require a conference that day. Okay. Some other skills, we need to be able to set short and long-term reading goals, attend to a speaker or in a class discussion, be able to use active listening skills, and to try to produce quality reader response notebook entries that connect both with the text, with the class, with book club discussion, or with conferences. All great reading workshop survival skills. Kids have to know where they should be sitting during independent reading time to avoid peer distractions. They need to use their time wisely there. They need to bookshop wisely. They certainly need to, during class discussion, to contribute, to piggyback on what another peer is saying, or to add a new perspective. We also have to teach our kids when to abandon a book and choose a new one. There's no sense that kids continue to read and wade through a book where they cannot connect with the character. It's they thought it was about a topic they wanted to read about, but it's really turns out it's about something else. The book is too hard, too many words that they really can't decode. The book is too easy, or the book, um, they want to just abandon the book because they are eager to read a book that their friends are all reading and they got it out of the library or their parents got it for them, and they don't want to wait. They want to read now because their friends are reading the book too. And so the book that they're abandoning can be put on the shelf, and maybe they can read it at a different time. But doing a mini lesson and creating an aggregate chart with all your kids on when to abandon a book is a great idea. And by the way, you can do this with when to abandon a piece of writing in writing workshop as well. Portfolios. I particularly love portfolios. Not everybody uses them, but a portfolio is a purposeful collection of student work. And this highlights what the artifacts that the reader wants to keep there, should show evidence of his reader's identity and his growth. So the reader decides which artifacts will best showcase growth and can add a small note of reflection to each artifact to indicate their significance. Of course, portfolios can include, but are not limited to, book reviews, book responses, book stack pictures, book talk scripts, reading timelines, book logs, book club self and group evaluations, a video clip that is of that reader giving a book talk or participating in readers theater, storytelling theater, or a peer conference, and an audio clip that includes a cold and or warm read. All of these are wonderful. So when the student is choosing artifacts to keep in his portfolio, these are some of the questions that he might respond to tag an artifact. Why did you select this piece? What does it tell me about you as a reader? Does this show a risk that you took as a reader? This shows that I can. One thing I learned by doing this is I am noticing a goal I now have is, and I used to, but now I, all of these wonderful ways to respond and document each artifact included. I also like, going back a minute, I also like to include a Dear Reader letter so that by May, my kids are writing a Dear Reader letter and pointing me. It's almost like guiding me with signposts. What should I be looking at as I examine their reading portfolio? And have I learned as a reader about myself this year in third grade or this year in fifth grade? And what are some possible goals that I have, or over the summer, how do I plan to build reading into my summer activities? Um, Goal setting is important. That's can be part of portfolio assessment as well. You begin with a rich collection, and then there's a selection process, and students have to decide which out of the rich collection they are going to actually keep as artifacts and tag. And when they tag, then they offer reflection. So it's all the shuns: collection, selection, reflection, and then, of course, there's celebration. And finally, there's goal setting, which is projection. Where are you headed? Um, we need goals that create a vision for where we are going next. Uh, this is an easy way you can do some formative assessment, coding, reading, engagement as you clipboard cruise around the room during independent reading time. You can find this in Welcome to Reading Workshop. Um, of course, you can create your own coding system, but I like to, these are some more frequent things that I'm noting. A plus if the reader's really engaged, um, a minus if maybe the reader is not engaged at all, a check if the reader is somewhat engaged. If he's walking around, looking around the room, looking out the window, trips to the bathroom, water fountain, pencil sharpener, I want to note that. I want to note if he's responding in his reader's notebook, if he's frequently asking the teacher for assistance, if he's partner reading, if he requests to go to the library to find a new book, if he's online doing some reading research, and F if he's fake reading. But I need to, for those kids, I really need to get at the heart of the matter. Why are those engaged in fake reading? So, reading inventory. Engagement inventory is a chance for you to meet with each student to set a literacy goal and discuss short and long-term goals, and use a code when you observe students to make it um, really simple and comfortable for you. Don't make anything too difficult or you're not going to use it. Anecdotal records have to be concise. They narrate, there are narratives about the student's performance, actions, and or behaviors. During workshop, we observe our students and we are thinking about skills, attitudes, performance, any classroom incidents, behavior. We certainly can write and compile and use our anecdotal records as a documentation system to inform our teaching, to be able to communicate with students and to communicate with parents and or classroom teachers as the reading specialist. Um, a template for anecdotal records could be the date of observation, the student name, a 3-column table to record events and behaviors, and additional space or pages to add comments, recommendations, and a plan of action. The minute paper At the end of class, this is kind of like an exit slip. It's the same idea. Just usually asking maybe 2 questions. Um, what was the most important thing you learned today in class during science or during reading workshop? And what important question remains unanswered? Sometimes ask your students what was the muddiest point of the class. Um, you sometimes have to give an example for this and explain what you mean by that. What made this point so difficult to comprehend? That's for grades 3 or 4 through 12. One sentence summaries, um, topic to address, and then answer the question who does what to whom, when, where, why, and how. Student generated test questions. I like to have kids actually um, during a unit of study. I particularly use student-generated test questions for content areas like science and social studies. I'll have the kids think of questions and then walk around on their clipboard with their clipboard and stop and share when I either turn the lights off and on again. They have to stop, face a person close to them, and ask one of their questions and see if the other student can answer it or give you some feedback as to whether you think it's a good question or not. And then you share one of your questions. And we do that for a while, and then we come together and I ask students to share one of their best questions or one of the questions that they heard from another student that they really thought was fair and a great question to test knowledge and get everybody thinking and responding. Um, in Reading Rockets, there's an article called Assessment Testing in Their Hands by Jacob Milner. And if you follow that link, hopefully you are working your way through Reading Rockets Module 101, and you will certainly gain many valuable insights from the module on assessment. So I hope you all get time to go there. My final thoughts is that assessment, of course, is an important part of daily practice. I really believe in formative assessment. It's ongoing, it's authentic. We can do it every day. It doesn't have to be at the end of a unit. It's not like the PSSA tests. Summative assessments are one thing, but everyday formative assessment, practical assessments that give us the knowledge to help our students grow and evolve into mature, confident readers. And certainly assessment practices, including opportunities for us to reflect on our own teaching and give students opportunities to reflect on their own learning, will provide many rewarding outcomes. Final reflections for you to think about. How do you use formative assessment practices during your reading workshop time, your reading classroom sessions? What ways do you keep daily records of your observations of student performance, their readerly behavior, their progress? What are you learning from them? Are your beliefs and values about reading and being a lifelong reader reflected in the way you handle assessment? And how do you groom your students to articulate their reading goals? Something to try. Maybe make a list of the ways that you're currently evaluating your students' reading abilities and readerly behaviors. And after you make the list, look at that list. What do you want to eliminate? What would you now want to add to your list? Perhaps share this list with a colleague, a grade level partner, and talk about what you value for your students as readers and what is on your list that represents what you value as a reader. Keeping a reading portfolio with your students, and consider including a book log of your read alouds. the book talks that you gave, highlights from book clubs, pictures of anchor charts, pictures of your library, student work and reflection. This is a great thing for you as a teacher to have available, and let your students see it too. So I really think portfolios can be a very powerful thing. I hope you might give it a try. Thanks so much for being here with me, and I do hope you not only read the chapter in Welcome to Reading Workshop, but again, the Module 101 for Reading Rockets on Assessment is wonderful and has lots of videos and opportunities to continue to read other um, articles about reading assessment. Thanks for being with me. Stay healthy. See everybody soon.